I told my in-laws that my husband was seeing someone else behind my back, and now he's having a mental breakdown. They're blaming me, but they told me there was nothing wrong. My husband Robert and I have been married for 7 years. We have a beautiful son who means the world to us. Our journey started in a way that I'll never forget. Robert and I have shared a lot over the years. Our paths crossed when I worked at my old job and he was my boss. I liked something about him right from the start. He was lovely and friendly by nature, which made him very easy to talk to. Always kind and helpful, not just to me, but to everyone else around him too. As I learned more about Robert, I felt drawn to him in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just how kind he was, though that was a big part of it. It was also how he made me feel like I was important and understood. He had this way of making everyday things feel special, and it wasn't long before I realized I was slowly falling in love with him. There was more and more time we spent together outside of work, and my feelings for him only got stronger. Luckily, he asked me to go on a date one day, and I said yes right away. At some point, when I started dating Robert, I didn't have any standards. There was nothing in particular I was looking for that would last, and I had no big plans in mind. He made me happy in a way that no one else had before. I just knew that I liked being with him. I really believed that we were deeply connected because we respected each other, shared beliefs, and cared deeply about each other. We seemed to be meant to be together, and I often told myself that this was how things were supposed to be. Robert and I come from very different families, which has made our partnership special in its own ways. For me, growing up was pretty easy because I had loving parents who took care of all my needs. For Robert, however, growing up was much harder. Unfortunately, his mother relied on him a lot, especially for money, and his father wasn't really involved in his life. She wasn't working and didn't have any funds. Since Robert was her only child, he had to take care of her from a very young age. She often begged him for money, and if he didn't give it to her, she would yell at him or make him feel bad. From the beginning, Robert was very honest with me about his position. However, I didn't really understand how much he helped his mother financially until we moved in together. We decided to take our relationship to the next level by moving in together. I invited Robert to move in with me because my place was bigger and more comfortable for both of us. At first, we agreed to split the bills equally, but as time went on, I saw that Robert was often having trouble with money. Often, he would whine that his bank account was almost empty, and there were times when he couldn't even pay for simple things like gas or groceries. Robert told me that most of his money was going to help his mother when I asked him about it. He had a strong sense of responsibility to her, which I understood, but I couldn't help but feel angry. It was hard to see him struggle, especially since I knew he could handle his money better if his mother didn't make him do so many things all the time. I offered that we change our financial arrangement, because I knew that this couldn't last. I suggested that we change how we split our shared costs, so that I would pay 70% of the rent and bills, and Robert would only have to pay 30%. This way, he could send some money to his mom and still have more money for himself. I thought this would make him feel a little less stressed about money and let him enjoy life a little more without having to worry about it all the time. I'm glad that this plan worked out well for us. It was good for our relationship and helped ease some of the stress that had been building up over money. Because of this, Robert was able to keep helping his mother without getting too tired, and our home life became calmer. This answer has been in place ever since, and it has made things easier for both of us. I felt a lot of different things when I found out I was pregnant with our son, Mark. There were parts of me that were excited about becoming a mom, and parts that were scared about how Robert would react. Because of his past and the money problems he was already having, I thought the news might be too much for him to handle. I thought he might be unsure or even against the idea because he was worried about the extra work and problems that would come with having a child. But to my surprise, Robert had the exact opposite response. His face lit up with happiness when I told him I was pregnant. He was so happy and excited that I didn't expect it. He even asked me to marry him right away after that because he wanted us to be married before our son was born. We got married soon after because his excitement and desire to start a family with me made me feel safe and happy. In the years since Mark was born, Robert has been a very loving and caring father. Watching him become a dad with so much love and excitement has warmed my heart. He has always made time to be with our son, whether it's to read him stories before bed, play basketball with him on the weekends, or help him with his chores. Robert has also never missed one of Mark's school games. He is always there to cheer him on and help him in any way he can. Watching Robert in this part has made my love for him grow in ways I never thought possible when we first started dating. Seeing how he treats our son, how much care and attention he gives him, and how close they are has made me love him even more. Until not long ago, I always thought that Robert and I would spend our old age together, sharing all of our memories and adventures. We often talked about how we wanted to spend our golden years traveling the world together and learning about new cultures and places. You can imagine how shocked and confused I was when I suddenly found out about my husband's secret life. To give you some background, Robert and I both have jobs that let us work from home most of the time. Robert has set up his desk in our extra room, which he calls his workroom. The room is clean and well organized, and it has everything he needs for work, like a big desk, several TVs, and shelves full of files and papers. He is very serious about his job, especially since he deals with private data. He even put a lock on the door to his workroom to keep private papers and data safe because of this. I totally got this need for privacy and safety, especially since they had a curious young son in the house. I didn't think to question it or feel the need to go into his office. The day I found the phone is still very clear in my mind. Robert ran a quick run, and Mark was sleeping. While I was cleaning up around the house, I saw that Robert had left the door to his workroom slightly open by mistake. It was locked when he wasn't in there, so I used this as a chance to clean his room because I knew there would be empty cans and crumbs all over the floor. I saw a drawer at the bottom of his desk that was slightly open while I was putting some papers in order on his desk. When I was about to close the door, I saw something shiny inside. When I opened it, I saw a phone I had never seen before. I looked at the phone out of interest and saw that it was turned off. There were so many ideas going through my head about why he had a second phone. Was it for work? Then why keep it secret? As I picked up the phone, I felt a knot form in my stomach. I wasn't sure if I should open it and see what secrets it held. I wanted to give him space, but I also needed to know what was going on. I had to figure out what was going on because this was so not like Robert. I chose to pick up the phone and see for myself. I chose to answer the phone and find out what was going on. As soon as the screen came on, the phone started buzzing nonstop, and messages started coming in all at once. Looking at the screen made my heart race, and my hands shook with fear and shock. The last few texts from an unknown number were the first thing that caught my attention. The way this person talked to my husband caught my attention right away. There were texts that called Robert her boyfriend, which made me feel very confused and scared. While I was reading more, I noticed that the other person was a woman. She seemed to have a deep, personal connection with Robert that I had never known about. It was in her writing that she talked about how excited she was to see him next week, and how her daughter was too. The word Papa made me feel like the ground was giving way under my feet. As the thought set in that this woman was talking about my husband as if he were the father of her child, I almost lost my balance. As I tried to figure out what it all meant, my mind was racing. Robert had never told me about this woman. There were tears in my eyes as I read more. I was getting more and more scared. I had to know more badly, so I tried to unlock the phone to read the text more carefully, but I didn't know the passcode. At that very moment, I felt like I had no control. I wanted to scream and throw the phone across the room out of anger and betrayal, but I knew I had to control my feelings. I might miss my chance to find out the truth if I threw away the phone or talked to Robert before I knew the whole story. I took a big breath and realized I needed to plan ahead. I quickly took out my own phone and began taking pictures of the texts that were showing up on the screen. I took as many pictures as I could because I thought they might help me figure out who this woman was and what was going on. It was important for me to know why Robert had kept such a big secret from me, as well as who she was and how long this had been going on. After taking all the pictures, I carefully put the phone back in the drawer the way I had found it. I made sure everything looked like it hadn't been touched while my hands were still shaking. I really did not want Robert to think that I had found his secret phone. Even though my whole world had just turned upside down, I knew I had to keep my cool and act like nothing had happened. As soon as I closed the drawer and left the workroom, I felt angry, betrayed, confused, and heartbroken all at the same time. But I was also determined to find out who this woman was and what kind of life Robert had been living behind my back. I had a lot of ideas about how to find out more about the number and the person sending those texts. When I had all the parts of the puzzle together, I knew I could talk to Robert. I had to hold back my feelings until then and keep acting like everything was fine, even though my heart was breaking. I chose not to change anything in Robert's workshop and left everything as it was so he wouldn't think anything was wrong. I did not want to set off any alarms or give him a reason to believe that I had been in there. Robert was shocked to find that his workroom door was slightly open when he got home. My heart skipped a beat when he asked me if I had gone inside. That being said, I kept my cool, casually shook my head, and said that he must have forgotten to lock the door. Robert seemed happy with my answer by nodding, and he didn't ask any more questions. The weight of what I had learned earlier hit me like a ton of bricks that night as I lay in bed next to my husband. It made me want to cry and scream so badly, but I couldn't because Robert was right there with me. All of a sudden, the man I loved and trusted seemed like someone I didn't know at all. It felt like all the love I had for him had gone away, leaving me with a cold nothingness and a deep sense of betrayal. He was the father of my child, and the person I had always thought would be by my side no matter what. I couldn't believe it was the same person. I knew I needed help. I had to find out who this woman was and what Robert thought of her before I could sleep. So I planned to sneak into the bathroom in the middle of the night, when I was sure Robert would be sound asleep, and call the number I had seen on his hidden phone. I thought that the woman might be asleep when I called, but I could try calling late and see if I could get her message. I hoped that her left message would at least hint at who she was, and maybe even tell me her name. I had no idea where this woman lived, but I was willing to take a chance because I was desperate to find out the truth. As the hours went by and the house got quieter, I finally moved. My heart was beating fast as I slowly got out of bed and tiptoed to the bathroom. I called the number from the pictures I had taken earlier with shaking hands. I prayed quietly that she wouldn't answer the phone while I waited for the call to go through. I wasn't sure what I would do if she answered, but I was set on making my plan happen. The phone rang several times, and each one sounded like it would never end. The phone finally stopped ringing, and when I answered it, I heard a soft, sweet voicemail box. Mindy was the name of the woman whose voice was on the recording. Hearing her voice made me feel even more pain because she sounded so young and happy. It broke my heart all over again when I found out that my husband was cheating on me with someone much younger than me. I held my phone tightly in the bathroom and felt completely heartbroken. It was becoming clearer what was going on, and it hurt more than I thought it would. Robert, the man I had been with all my life, was seeing someone else, a woman named Mindy. His friendship with her was strong enough for her to think of him as a father figure for her daughter. I chose not to wallow in self-pity when I woke up the next morning. Instead, I decided to take charge of the situation. I had to learn as much as I could about Mindy, this unknown woman. The first thing I did was look through Robert's Facebook friends list to see if I could find someone with that name. As I looked through the many names and profiles, I tried to remember if Robert had ever talked about a friend or coworker called Mindy. I tried very hard to remember when he talked about someone with that name, but I couldn't. That made me sad and angry, but I knew I couldn't stop there. When I saw that my online search wasn't leading me anywhere, I chose to go straight to the source. Even though I felt very angry, I knew that I had to talk to Mindy directly if I wanted to get some real answers. Should she refuse to tell me the truth, I would have no choice but to finally talk to Robert about it. It was a mix of drive and stress that made me pick up the phone and call Mindy. When she answered, I told her my name was Jennifer and that I was Robert's wife. I tried to keep my voice steady and cool, even though I was nervous. I asked her straight out if she had been seeing my husband, even though I knew she might not know about me or our marriage. I could feel her shock and confusion on the other end of the call as I talked. Mindy clearly wasn't sure about what I just said, so she asked me to repeat it. In a calm voice, I told him that Robert and I had been married for 7 years and had a boy together. The other end was dead silent, and I could feel the stress rising as I waited for her answer. I then told her that I had found her texts on Robert's second phone, which he had kept secret from my family and me. I told her I wanted to meet her in person, so we could talk about this more. I also offered to send her proof of our marriage, like our marriage certificate or family pictures, to show that Robert and I were married. Mindy finally spoke after what seemed like forever. Her voice was shaking as she asked me a question that stopped my heart. She asked me if I knew that she and my husband had a daughter together. I finally got her to say yes when I asked her if Robert really was the father of her daughter. I could barely raise my voice above a whisper as I tried to process this terrible news. Thoughty spoke with a heavy heart as she told me her side of the story. She looked like she was just as shocked and upset as I was. She said that she and Robert had been dating for about a year before she found out she was pregnant. She said that Robert was the one who told her she should keep the child by saying they would start a life together and that he would soon marry her. She had complete faith in him and never thought anything was wrong, even when he would disappear for days and say that his job needed him to travel a lot. Mindy went on to say that she had always thought it was strange that Robert didn't have any pictures on social media. This is true, as Robert's Facebook page didn't have any pictures of himself or us. So, she never had a reason to question him, let alone think that he was married and had a child. Mindy made it clear that she would never have dated Robert if she had known he was married. Her voice shook as she said this. What she found out shocked and disgusted her, and she felt cheated, both for herself and for me. My heart was heavy with sadness as I listened to her story. I could hear Mindy's pain and confusion in her voice, which was the same as mine. This woman, like me, had put her faith in Robert and built her hopes and goals on what he said he would do. And now, just like me, she had to face the hard truth of his lie. I totally broke down and could no longer hold back my tears. The disappointment, lies, and loss of everything I had believed in were too much for me to handle. Mindy was also crying on the other end of the call. That moment broke my heart. Even though we didn't know each other, we were linked in the worst way possible. I agreed to see Mindy in person so we could talk more about what had struck us. I still had a lot of questions, and I wanted to know how Robert had been able to live 2 lives at once. Robert and I were going to have to face each other, but I needed to get stronger and get ready for the hard road ahead. I made a plan that week. I told Robert that I had to go on an emergency business trip right away, so he would have to stay home and watch our son. He said he was upset at first and that he had a work trip coming up. I stayed calm and told him he had to cancel his plans and take care of our kid. I told him I wouldn't ask him to do this if it wasn't important. I was able to go ahead with my plan because he didn't argue or ask me more questions. Behind his back, I flew down to meet Mindy, even though my heart was heavy. When I got to her city, Mindy and I spent the whole afternoon telling each other our stories and putting together the pieces of the lives we had been living separately. It was strange to be sitting next to a lady who thought of my husband as her boyfriend. She showed me pictures of her daughter, a little girl who looked a lot like Robert. In return, I showed him pictures of my family and the life Robert and I had built together over the years. I won't talk about Mindy's personal life because I want to protect her privacy, but it was clear from what we talked about that Robert's betrayal hurt both of us badly. So, we both agreed on what to do. We both knew we didn't want to be with this dishonest man anymore. There was no way to fix the broken trust, and we both deserved better than to be with someone who could lie and trick us so badly. As we talked, I told him about my plan to talk to Robert and the steps I was going to take. Mindy was helpful and willing to help in any way she could. She agreed to send me all the pictures and videos she had of Robert with her and her daughter, so I could use them as proof when I finally spoke to him. She agreed with everything. It became clear to me during our conversation that Robert had been paying child support for Mindy's daughter. I knew it was the right thing to do to help support his child, but I was angry when I found out that Robert had been using my money to support his other life. As I already said, I've always paid more for things around the house because I thought Robert was having trouble paying his bills, because he owed his mother money. He was taking money from me to live this other life with Mindy and their daughter, but I had no idea. It became more and more clear that Robert had been using me for a long time as we talked. He took advantage of my kindness, trust, and love to keep up his dishonest way of life. Angry and hurt, I felt like I could not handle, but they also made me strong. I was no longer the innocent wife who had blindly trusted him. I was now a woman ready to take back control of her life and call out the man who had hurt her so badly. I knew I finally had the proof I needed to end my marriage to Mindy when I left that afternoon. I knew I couldn't stay at home any longer as soon as I got back. The hurt was still too fresh. Making the choice to move out, I packed a bag for myself and one for my son, Mark. I needed their help and a place to get back on track, so I went to stay with my parents. When I got back to my parents' house, I told them about all the pain I was feeling. They agreed with my choice to leave my husband. Pretty soon after that, Robert called to see where Mark and I were. When I answered the phone, I was cool and determined because I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. I told him straight out that I knew about his secret life. His answer was defensive. He wanted to know what I was talking about, so I told him I had talked to Mindy and was leaving him. Robert was angry and couldn't believe what was happening. He screamed at me that I couldn't just leave him and that he needed to be given a chance to explain himself. I tried to keep my feelings in check by taking a deep breath. I went right up to him and asked if it was not true that he had a daughter with Mindy and was paying child support for her. I pushed him even more and asked if it was true that he had been seeing Mindy for a year. I told him that his quiet was enough proof because he had nothing else to say. I didn't end there. I chose to email everyone on Robert's side of the family, as well as a few close family members on my side. I told the whole story in the email, including how Robert had been seeing a younger woman and had a child with her. Along with the text messages I got from Robert's secret phone and the pictures and videos Mindy sent me as proof, I sent you these. I was aware that it would cause a lot of trouble, but I thought it was important for the truth to be told. Sharing Robert's betrayal wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. I also wanted to regain my pride and make sure that everyone knew what had happened between us. The damage was quick and severe. People on both parts of the family had different reactions, ranging from shock and disbelief to anger and sympathy. Others were confused and angry, while others were helpful and willing to learn. Some of his family members even told him that Robert was cheating on him, while others told me to work things out with him so that the family wouldn't fall apart. Robert has been calling me nonstop and charging me of telling everyone about his dirty laundry. Aita for telling everyone about my husband's secret life. In the first update, my mother-in-law called me earlier today. The talk went in a way I didn't expect. At first, she looked just as shocked as I did when I found out Robert was cheating on me. I thought for a moment that she might understand or even offer some comfort, but it didn't take long for her whole mood to change. The mood of the talk changed, and all of a sudden, she blamed me for what had happened. I almost didn't believe what I heard. She was actually mad at me for telling on Robert. It seemed like I should have just brushed it off when she asked me why I would let something like this separate us. It was hard for me to decide whether to laugh or scream. She kept talking, telling me that when I married her son, I made promises that I would keep, no matter what Robert did. What she said hit me like a slap in the face. It felt like she was accusing me of giving up on my marriage too quickly. She then told me I should forgive Robert and move on because he couldn't change what he did. She thought that the easy way out of this mess was for me to accept what had happened and move on. I tried, but I failed. After everything I had been through, I wasn't going to ignore the fact that he had lied to me. Even though her words made my blood boil, I kept quiet and waited for her to finish whatever silly argument she was building up to. The part that made me lose it was when she told me that Robert had taken care of me and our son even though he had a second job. I laughed out loud at that comment because it had nothing to do with what was going on. Made available to us? Was that really what she thought? I had to do it. I had to be honest with her. I told her very clearly that Robert's contributions to our family funds only covered about 30% of our costs. I was responsible for everything else that allowed us to keep living the way we did. I worked extra hours, made the budget, and made sure the bills were paid. There was no doubt in my mind that I had been the main source. I had done more than my fair share for years, and now she was rude enough to tell me I should be thankful. Are you thankful for a man who lied to me, cheated on me, and didn't give you much money? I didn't hold back when I said that I don't forgive people who cheat. That is not something I am ready to give up. For her to keep protecting Robert, I told her she could take him back. I was no longer responsible for him. It was her choice if she wanted to protect him or be there for him. I was done with him. I wasn't going to deal with him, so she could. She got more angry and louder as I spoke, like she couldn't believe I was holding my ground. The more she yelled, the crazier her words got. But I had had enough. When I hung up the phone, I stopped her in the middle of a sentence. When I hung up the phone, I felt like a weight had been lifted. It was clear she would never get it. She would never see her son for what he really was. I no longer cared, though. I no longer cared what she thought. It was important to me that I took charge of my life and moved on from this nightmare. It's been a few weeks since that call with my mother-in-law, and to say the least, life has been crazy. As we move forward with the divorce, I've spent most of my time talking with my lawyer. That process takes a long time and wears me out, but I'm determined to see it through. Now there's no going back for me. Robert has tried to get in touch with me many times. At first, they called several times a day, and then texted to ask to talk. I never replied. Every time I look at my phone, his name comes up. It makes me remember how betrayed I feel and how hard it is to move on. It makes me feel a lot of bad things just thinking about his name. Of course there's anger, but mostly there's a deep hurt and deception. I told him everything I knew, and he broke my trust. But we don't have anything else to say to each other. I do not want to hear his side of the story. I don't care what made him cheat or why he did what he did. I know everything I need to know. He cheated on her, and that was it. Too many years have gone by while I've tried to understand him and make our marriage work. That's not okay for me to do again. I can't bear to think about what I might have done differently. It's not my fault. He made his choice, and now it's my turn. I only want him to leave my life so I can start over. I've learned a lot from the court process, even though it's very hard. I feel like I'm getting back a part of myself that I lost during our marriage with each step. It's not just about getting divorced. I want to take back charge of my life. Since I've been responsible for so much of the money, I've already taken a lot of steps toward freedom over the years. Now it's time for me to become emotionally independent. The goal is to free myself from years of being lied to, manipulated, and feeling like I'm never good enough for him. I'm okay with the fact that our son will still be friends with Robert when it comes to him. I can't take that away from him, and I don't even want to. Robert is still my son's father, even after all he's done to me. There's a good reason for my son to be close to him, even though I dislike the man. But I've made it clear that our son will live with me full-time. He will be mostly cared for by me, and I will make sure he grows up in a safe, loving home that Robert can't mess up. Report 3. It's been 4 months since my last report, and not much has changed with the divorce. This is still being worked out between Robert and me, but the court system takes a long time. Even though it's hard, I'm trying to be patient. It feels like this part of my life will never end, even though I want it to. I'm set on getting as much income as I can. I've put in too much work over the years to get nothing in return. I took on too many of the duties in our marriage while he played the role of the slack husband, and I wouldn't let him leave without paying for it. I need to be paid for the damage this has done to my feeling and my finances. My friendship with Mindy has stayed strong during this time. She's been a great help for me, and we stay in touch all the time. She kept her promise and broke up with Robert as soon as she found out he was lying. Just like me, she's only taking child support from him. Besides that, she doesn't want anything to do with him. I don't understand how this whole thing has brought us closer, but I'm glad she's in my life. Mindy has also shared some new information about Robert. It's not a surprise that he hasn't been a good dad to their daughter. It breaks my heart that he hasn't seen her in months. How can he be so far away from his own child? He talks a lot about being a provider, but he can't even show his daughter love and care like a father should. It's bad enough to cheat on your partner, but it's even worse to not care for your child. Without a doubt, I have told Mindy that if she or any other woman ever wants to get back together with Robert, I will not stand in their way. I'm done with him. I no longer care about what happens to him as long as he stays away from my life. He's happy for someone else to deal with him and his lies. I just want him to change for the better, for her and her girl's sake. I won't hold my breath, though.